From Pacifica, this is Democracy Now!
From 2006 to 2010, the Sinaloa cartel in Mexico, the Norte del Valle cartel in Colombia, and other drug traffickers laundered at least $881 million in illegal narcotics trafficking proceeds to HSBC Bank USA.
Too big to indict, banking giant HSBC escapes money laundering charges despite working with Mexican drug cartels and firms linked to al-Qaeda. The U.S. government settles with the bank for $1.9 billion. We'll speak with Matt Taibbi of Rolling Stone. Then to the case of Leonard Peltier.
I am everyone. I am everyone who ever died without a voice, or a prayer, or a hope, or a chance. Everyone who ever suffered for being an Indian, for being human, for being indigenous, for being free, for being other, for being committed.
In a renewed push, President Obama is being urged to grant clemency to the Native American activist Leonard Peltier, who has spent 37 years in prison. We'll air an exclusive jailhouse video of Peltier and speak with actor Peter Coyote. All that and more coming up. Welcome to Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, The War and Peace Report. I'm Amy Goodman. The regime of Syrian President Bashar al-Assad has reportedly fired Scud missiles at rebel fighters in what's being described as a major escalation. According to the New York Times, more than 6 missiles have been fired from around the capital Damascus into northern Syria. If confirmed, the move would mark the first time the Assad regime has used Scuds in Syria's 20-month-old internal conflict. In Washington, State Department spokesperson Victoria Nuland said Assad is displaying desperation and brutality.
As the regime becomes more and more desperate, we see it resorting to increased lethality and more vicious weapons moving forward. And we have in recent days seen missiles deployed. I would also say that we're seeing use of another egregious weapon, this kind of a barrel bomb, which is an incendiary bomb that is contains flammable materials. It's sort of a napalm-like thing and is completely indiscriminate in terms of civilians. So very, very concerning and indicative of the regime's desperation and the regime's brutality.
The Obama administration's invited Syria's umbrella opposition group to Washington following formal recognition earlier this week. Speaking at an international gathering in Morocco, Deputy Secretary of State William Burns followed up President Obama's public declaration of support for the Syrian opposition coalition with an invite to the White House.
Today, the United States has taken an important step forward. We now recognize the Syrian Opposition Council as the legitimate representative of the Syrian people. We have extended an invitation to Muaz al-Khatib and the coalition leadership to visit Washington at their earliest opportunity.
In the latest violence from Syria, at least 16 people have been killed and more than 25 wounded in a car bombing in the town of Katana. The victims reportedly included 7 children. The UN Security Council has voted to condemn North Korea for carrying out a new test launch of a long-range rocket. North Korea says it's experimenting to put a satellite into space, but opponents say North Korea is in fact testing for what could one day be a long-range nuclear warhead. At the UN, Secretary General Ban Ki-moon denounced the launch.
I really deplore today's rocket launch by the DPRK. It was all the more regrettable because it defied the unified and strong call of the international community. It is clear violation of the Security Council Resolution 1874, in which the Council demanded that the DPRK not conduct any launch using ballistic missile technology. I have been urging the leadership in Pyongyang not to carry out such a launch and instead to build the confidence to improve the lives of its people.
The U.S. and European Union say they'll push for a new round of sanctions against North Korea in response to the launch. In Israel and the occupied territories, clashes have erupted in the West Bank city of Hebron following the shooting death by Israeli soldiers of a Palestinian teen. Mohammed Sulaima was shot up to 6 times at an Israeli military checkpoint after Israeli soldiers said he brandished a fake gun. The Palestinians say Mohammed was killed after failing to heed Israeli orders to halt because he was hard of hearing. Mohammed's death fell on his 17th birthday. A widely circulated photograph taken hours before his slaying shows him smiling as he poses next to a birthday cake at school. Hours after the shooting, Israeli forces fired tear gas at Palestinian youths who threw stones and bottles in response. At least 5 Palestinians were hospitalized with injuries. The Pentagon's quietly confirmed plans to replenish the U.S.-made munitions used by Israel in its recent assault on the Gaza Strip. The website Common Dreams reports Congress has been notified of a $647 million deal to resupply the Israeli Air Force with the bombs and missiles that rained on Gaza over the course of the 8-day siege. The U.S.-backed Israeli attack killed more than 180 Palestinians, including many children. Congress is expected to approve the deal this week. As the U.S. resupplies the Israeli military, it's facing calls from key foreign allies to take meaningful action against Israel's latest settlement expansion in the occupied West Bank. Israel's announced plans to build 3,000 new settlement homes and expand the E1 settlement zone that bisects the West Bank in response to last month's historic Palestinian statehood vote at the United Nations. While governments across the world have denounced the move as a fatal threat to the two-state solution, the Obama administration has offered a tepid response, calling the massive settlement expansion, quote, counterproductive. At a meeting in Belgium, British Foreign Secretary William Hague and Swedish counterpart Carl Bildt urged the U.S. to join the world in opposing the settlements and seeking a negotiated peace.
I expect the whole of the EU, like the United Kingdom, will be strongly opposed to that and deplore that decision. And certainly in Britain, we call on the United States to lead a major effort to revive the peace process in the coming months, and I think we need to discuss today how European nations can best support that.
I think what the Israelis did there on the E1 has really shifted things inside the European Union to an extent that I don't think they have fully appreciated the level of concerns that are there.
Defense Secretary Leon Panetta has made an unannounced visit to Afghanistan to discuss the Obama administration's plans for its troop presence over the next several years. The White House has long billed its 2014 withdrawal deadline as an end to the Afghan war, but reports have recently surfaced of plans to keep some 10,000 troops in Afghanistan well beyond that date. Meeting with U.S. Commander General John Allen, Panetta praised the job of U.S. forces on the ground.
My purpose here is to have a chance to talk with John and the other leaders, see the situation on the ground, talk to the Afghan leaders, and try to tee up decisions that the president ultimately has to make with regards to the future. You guys have done a great job. I can't tell you how proud we are of all the work you're doing.
Egypt's opposition leaders have begun urging supporters to vote no instead of boycotting the upcoming referendum sought by Egyptian President Mohamed Morsi. The vote will take place this Saturday and 1 week later as Morsi seeks approval of a constitution drafted by an Islamist panel. On Wednesday, opposition leader Hamdin Sabahi of the Secular National Salvation Front urged opponents of the constitution to take part in the referendum by voting no.
The National Salvation Front confirms the legitimacy of all peaceful means to bring about the cancellation of this distorted constitution. The front has decided to invite the people of Egypt to go to the ballot boxes and vote no. There is only one way to get the country out of the present deadlock and the political tension, and this is for the president to shoulder his responsibility by issuing a decision to postpone the referendum by 2 or 3 months, as well as to put in place serious and balanced national dialogue.
Voting on the Constitution began at embassies worldwide Wednesday for Egyptians living abroad. The talks on averting the so-called fiscal cliff continue in Washington with no reported breakthroughs. The White House and congressional Republicans are hoping to strike a spending deal before a round of tax hikes and spending cuts take effect next month. On Wednesday, House Speaker John Boehner and White House spokesperson Jay Carney continued to lay blame for the stalemate at the other side of the bargaining table.
In the 5 weeks since we've signaled our willingness to forge an agreement with the president, he's never put forth a plan that meets these standards. And frankly, it's why we don't have an agreement today.
The obstacle thus far has been the adamant refusal to accept the proposition that rates have to go up for the top 2% and that rates must continue to stay where they are so that there is no tax hike on 98% of the American people. And I think what Republicans have to explain somehow is why, Republican leaders anyway, why it is better for you, broadly speaking, the American people, 98% of you, to have your taxes go up if the wealthiest Americans don't get a tax cut.
The Federal Reserve has announced plans to keep interest rates near zero until the official unemployment rate falls to 6.5%. The unprecedented move was unveiled alongside plans to purchase another $45 billion in Treasury debt. Announcing the measures, Federal Reserve Chair Ben Bernanke said the Fed won't be able to properly offset the full economic damage should the U.S. fall off the fiscal cliff.
Outside forecasters all think that that would have very significant adverse effects on the economy and on the unemployment rate. And so on the margin, we would try to do what we could. We would perhaps increase a bit. But I just want to, again, be clear that we cannot offset the full impact of the fiscal cliff. It's just too big, given the tools that we have available and the limitations on our policy toolkit at this point.
In other news from Washington, Massachusetts Democratic Senator-elect Elizabeth Warren has been selected to join the Senate Banking Committee when the new Congress convenes next month. Best known for launching the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau under President Obama, Warren's bid to join the Senate and subsequently the Banking Committee was heavily opposed by Wall Street lobbyists. A military judge presiding over the death penalty trial of 5 prisoners accused of orchestrating the 9/11 attacks has approved the government's request to keep testimony about their torture secret. Before being transferred to Guantanamo in 2006, the 5 prisoners, including the alleged 9/11 mastermind Khalid Sheikh Mohammed, were held in secret CIA prisons and reportedly tortured during interrogations. In a ruling released on Wednesday, Army Colonel James Pohl banned the disclosure of information about where the prisoners were held before Guantanamo and the so-called enhanced interrogation techniques they may have endured. The American Civil Liberties Union had challenged the government's request for secrecy, saying the public has a right to hear the testimony. The ACLU now says it will seek further review. New York and 6 other states have announced plans to sue the Environmental Protection Agency for failing to address methane emissions created by the oil and gas industry. Methane is the second most prevalent greenhouse gas emitted by humans and 21 times more powerful at contributing to global warming than carbon over a 100-year period. In a statement, New York Attorney General Eric Schneiderman said the oil and gas industry is the single largest source of human-made methane emissions and called the EPA's failure to address those emissions a violation of the Clean Air Act. Schneiderman said, quote, "We can't continue to ignore the evidence of climate change or the catastrophic threat that unabated greenhouse gas pollution poses to our families, our communities, and our economy," the New York Attorney General said. The federal government held a controversial auction Wednesday to allow for oil drilling and fracking on some 18,000 acres of California public land. The Bureau of Land Management said at least 8 bidders in Sacramento competed for oil leases in areas of Central California, home to some of the largest deposits of shale oil in the United States. The auction was met by dozens of protesters chanting environmental slogans and donning hazmat suits. In a statement, protest organizer and environmental watchdog, the Center for Biological Diversity, said, quote, "The federal government should protect these beautiful public places, not sell them off to be drilled and fracked, risking irreparable harm to our air, water, and climate." And those are some of the headlines. This is Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, the War and Peace Report. I'm Amy Goodman.
And I'm Juan Gonzalez. Welcome to all of our listeners and viewers around the country and around the world.
Juan, before we move to our first story, congratulations on the International Documentary Association Award for the film based on your book, Harvest of Empire.
Well, actually, the congratulations go to Eduardo Lopez, the co-director, who really got together all of the archival footage that was used, and that was basically the recipient of the prize was the prize for the best use of archival footage in telling a film story.
And also then yesterday the Smithsonian recommended Harvest of Empire: The History of Latinos in America as some of the best books to read on history at the end of this year.
Yeah, they put it into their Christmas gift package. So I think that's a welcome honor. Although actually the book has been out for 13 years, so but it's great that they. Yes, I recently updated it in a new edition, so it's great to see that the Smithsonian, one of the Smithsonian curators, recommended it for as a Christmas gift for this year.
Well, I'm glad to know that Smithsonian has endorsed Democracy Now's endorsement. Thanks so much for watching this report from Democracy Now!, your daily independent global news hour. We don't accept advertising or corporate funding, but rather rely on donations from viewers like you. Please make your contribution by visiting democracynow.org. We need your support today to keep bringing you this hard-hitting, in-depth reporting.